we've taught our children, we were taught as infants to say hello and goodbye.
Yeah, I realize not every person who dies is celebrity, but they're special.
Yeah.
They mean something to somebody, and they just want to share their story. And we help them do that. That's kind of a really cool thing.
The most special things you can have in a funeral, the things that you'll always remember for families, are the things that actually don't cost any money.
Death has been something that people have tried to isolate, and we're saying it needs to be integrated, to integrate it into life, so that the person, it's not reincarnation or something like that. It's just recognizing and honoring and facilitating the natural circle of life.
Well, hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of Undertaking the Podcast. This is a special episode. Very, very, recorded. Well, I'm putting it out today that it's coming out. It was recorded a few hours ago, edited and put together, and here we are. But I'll kind of introduce the episode a little bit here in a minute. Let's hit our sponsors, though, real quick. We're going to start off with National Mortuary Shipping and Cremation. Friends, when it comes to domestic, international mortuary shipping can be complex. Make no mistake, give them a call, 1-800-321-0185. When it comes down to it, they've got a very, very good team. And the services they provide when it comes to, it goes all the way out, services embalming, shipping, cremation, removal, flight arrangement, graveside services, livery, disinterment. They do all of that. So especially, golly, I hate to be, I'm not going to hate to be this way. For instance, Jason Duvall in very rural Kentucky, when it comes to funeral service, he might give them a call if he's got something coming out of state or something that he may need. So National Mortuary Shipping and Cremation. You'll see the website in the show notes, nationalmortuaryshipping.com. Give them a call, guys. You'll find them on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter also. Gather.app, Zach Chatterton over there. Golly, we had a podcast with him a while ago where he talks about the story here, but it's the easiest way. Gather is the easiest way to manage your crematory, your mortuary, your business, your funeral home. They have case management software, QR code body tracking, which the QR code's a big thing. Pierce understands that with us. That was a big thing for me when it comes down to it. But this is something that just helps guys and helps with tracking is very important. I can't stress that enough, especially if you're in a high volume firm, very much so. So they've got funeral live streaming, and then they also help with websites, and they do an awful lot there. Gather.app. See the show notes for the website. And, with what we're talking about here today, Indiana Donor Network, guys, I don't have enough good things to say about these people, these ladies and gentlemen over there. These ladies that are running it over there are doing a heck of a job. And my family in this episode is a testament to that in a lot of ways. We were able to spend some more time with my father because of donation and what that did for our family. So IndianaDonorNetwork.org is the website. But Mackenzie Huey's the funeral director liaison over there. We have it's a committee or a council over there where we have communication with the Indiana Donor Network. Now, that's not everywhere. That's not across. No OPO, organ procurement organization, is equal in all states by any means. Not all of them are created equal by any means. So we have the ability and quite honestly, very lucky to be able to have this conversation with them, tell them our needs versus what their needs are. How can we come together and work together? Because, ultimately we are both working for families in different aspects and different capacities. So there we are, IndianaDonorNetwork.org. Well, let's get into this episode and let me introduce it real quick. So this is a special episode for me. This is my wife. This is Tracy Ballard. The best thing to ever happen to me by by all means, she has an opportunity to kind of tell her story. The day that my father passed away, you've heard what I've done. You've heard where I've gone and what happened and what happened with those routes. But I think we have to remember, in these moments of chaos and in these moments of tragedy, we have people that have to handle things at home, that have to have hard conversations with family members that maybe we aren't there for because we're having to deal with other things. She had to have some hard conversations with my daughters, with her mother, so she gets to talk about that, and she gets to kind of, tell her story, because there's a story there, guys. And this is what we do at the podcast. We like to tell this story, and we've been working on this for a while. It was one of those things where we've talked about it, never sat down. And I don't know if it was a comfort level or thing or not. You will hear in this some emotion from both of us. But I let her go. I'm proud of my wife. She is an amazing female, amazing woman, and I support her in all aspects professionally, and as a mother. She's just, these girls are just so lucky to have what they have when it comes to her. So I feel it's important for her to tell her story, and I thought this was a new, kind of a new thought process and a behind the scenes look at what happens, because people, there's so many things that happen and that you forget in those moments. And I never thought about what my wife might have gone through and the conversation she had to have until a few months ago. And maybe that was selfish of me. I don't know, but I know there were some tough things that she had to deal with here at home, to make sure when I got home, we could make arrangements for my father. So there's that. But this is it's a deep episode, fun episode. I love having my wife on, man. She's fun to talk to. I hope she comes on more often. I'd love to see her get a segment of something that she would like to do. But she's a big IndyCar motorsports fan. Our family, are very big into that. When it comes to IndyCar, F1 can go pound sand. I've said that time and time again. The drivers are so different with F1. The ego, I can't stand ego, friends. And F1 versus, and I think you see that with who comes in from F1 to IndyCar. But neither here nor there, has nothing to do with that. But so we are race fans, and she talks a little bit about her background and what she's doing with the motorsports, and you get to meet her a little bit more. She's not very often. I think she's only been on one other time. It's been a few years ago, but we're looking to change that a little bit. So my wife, Tracy Ballard, hey, take a listen, guys. It's a different thought process when it comes to what she dealt with the day that my father passed away. So rock and roll. There will be a closer, friends. It engages the recording. Hello, friends. Welcome to Undertaking the Podcast. I am your host, Ryan Ballard. I'm joined here with, quite honestly, my best friend in the world, the love of my life, my wife, Tracy. Kind of a different podcast we're doing today. This is a podcast where she's going to kind of tell a story. I had the opportunity a while ago to talk about what I went through with my father in that day and that process. But there's also another process and another side to this story. I know when I left the hospital, you all heard what occurred there. You all heard what I went through. But there were many things that people went through that day. And my wife went through some things that I didn't have to because I was dealing with other things. So I wanted her to tell her story as to kind of what occurred that day when we left the hospital and what she had to do that kind of involves the girls and a few other things. So that's who we've got here today. Tracy Ballard, welcome. Introduce yourself to the crowd. We've only had you on maybe one time. Was it the Wives podcast a while ago? Was it the Wives podcast?
He doesn't want me on more than that. He's afraid I'm going to take over.
That's okay if she does. Probably have some better leadership if we did, but it is what it is there. But walk me through that day. So that day...
I thought you wanted me to introduce myself.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry, I was in host mode. I apologize.
Well, I'm your wife, and it sounds like you want something from me the way you introduced me.
Oh, I'm very happy that you're engaged in this. So this is something that I've been wanting to do for a while, and we just have not ventured to it yet, and I'm excited that you're excited to tell your story, because you do have one.
Okay, well, introducing myself, you're a wife of how many years now, sir?
So
Can you tell me?
13.
There you
COVID was
go.
our 20. We were going to go to Ireland
Lucky
for
13.
COVID.
That's right. That was going to be
COVID.
our 10 year.
Yeah, did not
Took that
happen.
right out. Married for 13, together for almost 17. Goodness, that's a long time.
Blessings.
3 kids later.
An amazing life.
Yeah.
Amazing life. But tell them a little bit about what you do professionally.
Oh, well, I have been a nurse now for almost 20 years, 19 years, I believe. My entire background is emergency medicine and trauma and motorsports. So I started my nursing career as a student nurse at Methodist in Indy in their level 1 trauma center. And then after I graduated nursing school, I stayed there, worked in the emergency department there for 11 years total. Couple years during that time, I had a little hiatus, and I was a flight nurse for Lifeline and
It's
did
not
that.
really a hiatus. That's
It wasn't a hiatus.
nursing.
I
That's
still,
emergency medicine.
Well, during that time, my main job was a flight nurse, and I worked there on an as-needed basis during that time for about. I did full time for about a year flight nursing, and
I
then
feel like it was
did.
longer.
Well, and I did another year after that. I would fill in for people, but that was around the time I started doing that. I was flying while we got married, and then soon after that, a year or so after, I got pregnant with Kennedy. So I didn't feel like
Oops.
that. It was not an oops. That
No.
was planned.
No.
That was planned on my part, at least. It was planned. I don't know about you, but
She had, she had it planned, definitely. So it is what it is. It's all.
I'm a planner.
It's
If
been
you know
great.
anything about me, I'm a planner. I like to have a plan. I need to know what's going on. I need to know what's happening. I need a timeline. I want to get from point A to point B at a certain time, and we're never late. If you're on time, you're late.
Oof, listen to that. That's.
And our oldest daughter is like that. She's very meticulous like that, and that's great in some factors, but sometimes it drives me up a wall because she's just like me. Anyways, so did that. Was there at Methodist for 11 years, and then we moved so that Ryan could work in the family business. We moved from living in Indianapolis up to living where we're currently at, and I commuted for about a year and a half.
Which is Yorktown, Indiana, friends. We got to have a little bit of love here for Yorktown, Indiana. It's a global podcast.
Yeah.
So.
And then the company that I work for, IU Health, they have lots of hospitals throughout central Indiana. So then I transferred up to the one in Muncie, Indiana, Ball Hospital, and worked as their emergency department and trauma educator for 7 years. And then recently, it's been about 6 months now, my full-time is still with IU Health, but I am the clinical operations manager for the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Infield Medical Center and our IndyCar traveling medical team. So a little bit of info on that background. I have been working at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway in their Infield Care Center, which is basically a full-fledged emergency department that is run by IU Health and has been staffed by IU Health and Methodist Hospital for a long, long time. But I started doing that when I was a baby nurse. So I think I've been out there over 15 years working events at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And then I got the opportunity to be on their traveling medical team. Oh, goodness. How old's Kennedy? 11. So this is 12. I've been doing that 12 years. So our traveling medical team travels around the country and takes care of the whole IndyCar paddock. So drivers, crew members, team members, IndyCar folks, we travel around and provide their medical care when they're on the road. So was always my fun side gig, and now has turned into my fun full-time gig, which is the best thing in the world.
Which she's loving, no
Yes.
question about it. Well, I mean, it's a heck of an elevator speech. There's no, you need a few elevator rides for that. So well done.
Thank you.
Done. You've got an extensive history within emergency medical care and, within anything ER, especially when it comes to Indianapolis and where we're at. But so we decided today to sit down and it's been a minute. February 6th was the day Dad passed away. So that's been a minute. Today is October 29th. But I always ask Tracy, I never knew what happened when I left the hospital. I wasn't here when the kids were home and when all those things had to Well, I had to be addressed, and you'll hear the kids running upstairs. Bear with us.
They're probably running around the upstairs looking for us. So if you hear a child running and screaming, it's because we've left them upstairs to their own devices.
The
So
people
who
love
knows
it.
what's going to happen?
People love the realism. So we're downstairs right now in our house doing this. I've got a picture of my dad there off to the corner, celebrating him in certain aspects here. But Tracy, I want to ask you. So the last thing that I remember leaving the hospital.
He's rubbing my feet, and I was like, you can probably hear that.
They can. The last thing I remember leaving the hospital is the coroner had just come in. We had our back and forth, whatever that was, spirited back and forth. The autopsy isn't going to be done.
Well, I'm going to
And then-
start a little bit before that.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
So it's Ryan always talks about on the podcast being on the other side of it. His view of being on the other side of having a loved one that's passed away. And I feel fortunate, and I think Ryan was fortunate, that we hadn't really had a very, very close loved one like that had, an untimely death, should we say. We've had grandparents pass away and things like that, but neither of us had experienced that, and I hadn't really experienced a close loved one who was very ill in the hospital and kind of being on the other side of medicine. So his illness that ultimately took his life was short duration because it went so fast, and I know how fast, sepsis can take somebody's life, and, all of the common signs and symptoms, and it was just very hard to believe and frustrating because he initially didn't have any of the common signs and symptoms that all of us in healthcare look for.
We're all in healthcare.
Yeah, it was just so fast. He deteriorated so fast. But when he was in the hospital, when we started, seeing lab results and hearing what the doctor had to say, I knew that it was really, really bad. But he had pulled through a really, really bad illness before, and I think we were all hopeful that would happen. And
We almost expected it, I think.
I think so. Yeah, I think we, had some hope, and, he's a strong man of faith, and we're a strong family, and we thought that, with the powers that be and with medicine that he'd be able to pull through again. But we, realized very early on the day that he passed away, that was not going to happen. But we even thought we had more time than we did to sit as a family and for you guys to discuss and make decisions, and it just went by very quickly. It was almost being able to be in the room and support you guys while he was passing away was, I don't know, it was so different not being a nurse but being a family member in that.
Talk to me about that real quick. But bearing witness to all that, going through all that, listening to my mother, myself, my sister, and kind of stepping back and being that support system. What was that like?
I don't know. It would, I'm trying to be there and support all of you guys and, give you time with your father. But yet in my, I'm upset and crying, and because he's become such an important person in my life and to our children. And so, want to make sure that you guys are up there and able to be with him. And I was trying to support you guys as best I could, but the nurse in me, the critical care emergency trauma nurse in me, wouldn't turn off. So I was paying attention to what medications he was on and the drips he was on. I was paying attention to his vital signs, and knew that it was bad. We just didn't think it was going to go as quickly as it did. So
there we are. We were in the room. You said you wanted to start somewhere else. So
well, that's what I was starting with, kind of supporting you
Yeah.
guys, being on the other side of it there,
But
seeing how families deal, and you guys know what comes after a loved one dies. You guys know the
We
steps.
handled it.
Yeah,
That's all
you
we did.
handled it, and I can't imagine the
What?
confusion and where do we go from here feelings of people that aren't in the business and don't understand where to go from there. But you guys got all that handled, and we kind of sat as a family afterwards. It was still pretty early in the morning, and you guys were going to go do all your things, and we had decided that we would all meet at our house that evening to discuss what your dad would have wanted and get things rolling on that end. So I knew that I had to, and luckily I was off that day. Actually, no, I wasn't off. I called into work.
I think you called in
Yeah,
because
I
of the
called into work.
situation.
Yeah. And because I was still at Ball full time at the time, and the girls were at school. I think, and I tell this story because I think my girls, they called him Gaga, and everybody says, "Well, why did they call Marty Gaga instead of Grandpa or Gramps or whatever?" Well, the story is Kennedy, our oldest, she couldn't say Grandpa, so she was little and started saying Gaga. Gaga. He's Gaga. So it just always stuck. He became Gaga. So our oldest, who was 10 at the time, Gaga was her best friend. Absolute best friend. She had an Apple Watch. She's not old enough for a cell phone, but because she does a lot of extracurriculars, we wanted a way to be able to contact her and talk to her throughout the day and know where she's at in case she needs us. So one of the very few contacts on her iWatch was Gaga, and they would text each other throughout the day, text each other funny memes or just see what's going on. And I remember before I left the hospital to come home, she knew that Gaga was sick and in the hospital. They didn't know the severity of it, but she was texting him, "I love you, Gaga. Are you okay?"
Oh, I remember that.
And Tim had Marty's phone, and I remember him just looked at me. He said, "Kennedy just texted Gaga and said, Gaga, are you okay?"
I remember that.
And that was really, I think that's when it hit me at first. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have to tell my children that their best friend died.
Be the best friend. You're right.
So that's what I was at that time mentally preparing for, and in my head thinking, okay, I've got to get food at the house, got to get the house clean, and I hate cleaning. I absolutely hate cleaning. But I came home and I rage cleaned our entire house, like clean things I haven't cleaned in I don't know how long. So that.
And why? Just to
take my mind
something?
off of what I was gonna have to do.
Gotcha.
To be doing something, because I couldn't just sit and not do anything, and I didn't want to go into work, obviously.
And this is just a few hours before they get off the bus.
A few hours before I think by the time I got home, it was maybe, I don't know, noon, and they usually got off the bus at 3, so I had 3 hours to clean. I did an Instacart of food, comfortable food, finger foods, chocolate, I don't know, cheese, all the things that could be easily, I know people probably wouldn't have a big appetite, but stuff that you could graze on.
And that is one thing I'll comment on, and she'll state that too. It's weird within those stressful situations, you lose so much appetite because you just don't think. You're not hungry. The stress is crazy. So that's one thing I noticed throughout the process with at least me, but go ahead. Talk about the appetite, but go ahead.
Yeah. So I knew that the kids and other people may want to graze on things, so I had that available. And after, it didn't take very long for word to spread. Before we had even made mention on...
Before we were out of the hospital,
there were
I was
people,
getting text messages.
Yeah. So word had spread very quickly. The very few people that had got calls were spreading the word quickly. And luckily we have amazing family, friends, people that, provided pizza and stuff for us that night, but got food ready, rage cleaned the house. I called my mom, who my parents live about an hour and a half north of where we live, and my parents are phenomenal. So I called, they were up to breast on what was going on with Marty. So I called and let her know that he had passed and asked if she would come down to be with me, because I knew that I was going to be by myself when I had to tell the girls what was going on. So she graciously left her job, because she was not retired yet at the time, and came down to be with me. And at the time, our youngest was still in daycare, and our oldest was 4th grade, the middle was 3rd grade, and one of them had choir that day. So our oldest was getting off the bus, and then my mom went shortly thereafter so I could stay home with the oldest until her, while she went and got our middle one off the bus. So I was able to tell all of them, just one at a time. And so I think our oldest knew something was up when she saw that her grandma was here with me. And first thing she said when she came in, she's all smiles getting off the bus, is, "How's Gaga? Did you see him?" And I said, well, come over here and sit with me. We're going to talk about Gaga. And she knew immediately. She said, is he okay? Is he okay? Is he dead? Was the first question that she asked me. Is he dead? And I said, yes. Gaga died this morning. Oh, sorry. And the wail, the cry that came out of her, I will never forget.
Was it a screech, a scream?
Yeah, it was more of a scream. A no. So, that was really hard. So we sat with her. And she's always very inquisitive, wants to know what happened. Why did he die? Why did, what happened this time? Because she knew that he had been very, very sick the year before and had pulled through.
Pulled through a lot, yeah.
And we're always with us being medical, I'm very medical terms with our kids. I try to explain the workings of the body and why certain things happen, rather than using, what do you say, layman's terms, or I don't really dumb a lot of things down for our girls.
But she has to for me. I'm a simple person. Anyway, but yes, we talk very accurate with our kids.
So that, and then she kind of wanted to hang out with, I think, a stuffed animal that Gaga had given her at one point. So she was kind of hanging out on her own. And when the middle one got home, told her, and she, obviously was very upset and crying. But the middle, they all have their connection with Gaga. But our oldest really had a connection with him being the first grandkid and spending lots of time at their house before any of the other grandkids were born.
How was Mo's reaction?
Well, I had to go. That was so I had to go pick up Monroe from daycare, and our daycare that the girls went to at the time was connected with the church that Marty was the pastor of. So
2 years removed.
2 years removed, but
I don't want to say removed. He retired.
He retired. 2 years retired from that church that the daycare's at. So he was very, very close with everyone. And I knew that word had been spreading.
It was all over social.
Well, we hadn't been on social yet, but I was afraid.
Somebody said something because there was a friend of my mother's that made a comment.
Well, we hadn't said anything.
Why don't you let the family make a comment before?
And so I called the daycare preemptively and talked to one of the women that runs the daycare, and because I was worried that somebody was going to find out and say something to Monroe before.
I didn't think about that.
Before she found out, like it would, circulate through the teachers who all knew Marty, and she would find out. So I called the daycare ahead of time and told, which it hadn't spread there yet. So I told
daycare didn't know yet.
Daycare didn't know yet, and I told her over the phone. And so I just said, please, try to shield Monroe from this until we're able to come and get her. So. And I can't remember. I think I told her.
Could you?
I don't think because I was by myself with her in the car, and I waited till we got home. I didn't say anything in the car, but she, didn't ask about Gaga or anything. But when we got home, I told her, and she still is at the age of 5 years old where she didn't really have a great concept of what death meant yet. She knew, had a grasp of it, but I remember a few days later. She said, well, Gaga, when is he going to come back?
Yeah.
He died, but when is he going to come back?
I remember that.
So she was sad because everybody around her was sad, but she didn't quite understand yet the finality of death or what that meant. And
what's crazy?
5 years old.
Well, and she's been around. It's not crazy, I guess. She's been around it. She's walked through the chapels with me. She's gone to work with me. She's been around it, so she understands that something does happen. But until it relates to her personally, it had never registered. Mm-hmm. Which, why would it? She's not that old. Anyway, go ahead.
So that was probably, doing that is on the top of my list for hardest things I've ever had to do, was to tell them.
I want to know what was going on in your head on the way home, driving home, knowing that you're going to have a conversation that, quite honestly, you're not going to want to have.
I honestly remember thinking, this is so strange that I'm driving.
Surreal.
Surreal, strange. I'm now driving in a world where Marty isn't alive anymore. And I feel like I could feel, it was like a change in the air immediately. And how things were changed because he wasn't there.
There was a vibe and an energy that's different, and it's still different within our family. No question about it. It'll always be different. What was your expectation? Did you, when it came to coming in, sitting with the girls, and actually sitting down and telling them this, what was your expectation as to what each girl was going to do and how they were going to act?
You know, I think
everyone
my
was different.
expectation was
What was
similar
Madison?
to what
How about that?
happened.
You never really said Madison.
Well, she didn't scream like Kennedy did, but she was crying, and she's she wants touch and affection, so I held her, whereas Kennedy was just kind of wailing and rolling around on the floor. But Madison wanted to be held and wanted to talk about Gaga. Oh, what are we going to do now? What am I going to do at swim lessons? Because I think Ryan has touched on that a lot. After Marty's initial, illness that almost took his life a year ago, he's always been focused on family, but he really, he was getting close to retirement from the funeral home and able to spend more time with the family, and he helped us out a bunch. So the previous year, our girls are swimmers, and he loved to take them to swimming. So I expected my 2 to 3 time weekly text from him. What time you want me to get the girls? And their special time. He would just love to sit in the bleachers and watch them practice. And if anybody knows him, he was such a people person, talks to everybody.
They all knew him. All the swim moms.
All the swim moms. So we would joke that next year he was going to be president of the swim club because, he knew them all, during practices, chatted with everybody.
They'd wave at him. Marty, hey, Marty.
See him in the stands, see him there. And then after swimming, he would take the girls to McDonald's, and they'd either eat or get ice cream, and they just had a lot. I just thank God for the quality time that they had with him. Year before he died.
That year, he changed a lot.
And I remember the first time we went to swim practice after he had passed away, and Madison, because Kennedy was swimming and it wasn't Madison's turn yet, and she was sitting in the bleachers with me, and she just leaned against me and she said, "This is where Gaga would always sit."
Yeah. So that's obviously something you never thought you'd have to do as a mother. It's not something when you sit down and get married and you think about you're ever going to have to do. You've got an opportunity here to tell. And you've obviously told your stories, but what do you say to a mother that's maybe never gone through this before? How do you prepare somebody to tell their kids that their most loved individual, I wouldn't say most loved individual, but like you said, their best friend has disappeared? What do you say to a mother that may be in that same situation? You've been through it.
Just make sure that, you are if you can, be in a safe place for them, if you can be at home or somewhere they feel comfortable and not in a crowd of people, because, how they, depending on what age the kid is, how they react, they may not want people around them to see how they're going to react or anything like that. So try to be in a safe space, a quiet space, and let them have the reaction that they naturally want to have. Let them ask questions. Let them grieve how they, what comes naturally to them based on what their age is.
Something I just want to comment on is, I think you're amazing. I love you. I think you're an amazing person. I'm so blessed in so many ways. But the hardest thing, I think, that within what we do as funeral directors and just what we do, I think in life in general, is having to hear that sound of someone's heart breaking. And I think that's what you bared witness to the day that you came home and told our children that their best friend had disappeared.
Yeah, and I've heard that sound a lot working in the emergency departments. I've been around a lot of families when they're told that their loved one didn't survive or won't survive, and it's just so different when it's your family.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is I didn't have to hear that, guys. That's why I wanted to record this. I didn't have to hear that. To hear that tone from your children, it had to have been awful. And I wanted to record that and record what Tracy had to say, because I think that it's important. the sound of a heartbreaking means something different to everyone. I've mentioned that in the past when it comes to people passing away locally, and it's a child or something, of that nature. And this was different. This hit my family differently, and this, my wife is the one that had to take care of that stuff at home. That wasn't me. I had other responsibilities. She came home and led as she should. So I appreciate you. I love you.
And then trying to take care of you because I knew something that was very eye-opening to me, and I hadn't been on this side before, was you wanted to come home to be with us, but you did not want your dad to be left alone at the funeral home. You wanted to be there as much as you could. And for me, someone that didn't grow up in the funeral home and didn't grow up in the funeral business, at first it struck me as kind of odd. I'm like, well, why? I don't think I would want to be just in a room with my parent who is deceased. And then I, had to sit back and think about it. And you had said to me, I want to spend as much time as I can with him, with his physical body before it's gone. And I was like, okay, well, that makes sense. Because at first I was like, well, why does he want to spend so much time at the funeral home? Why does he not want to be home with me and the girls? But when you said that, I was like, well, that makes sense. Okay.
Well, yeah, that was it. And that was home to him too. And home to me. I mean, where he laid as a kid was our living room growing up. So, it just, I took pictures, there's all kind, I did things that were a little bit maybe unconventional. And you're right, Tracy. I mean, that is weird. Why would you want to be there? For me, I don't know. I wouldn't know what else to do. And within what I do, that's all we know is to be around the deceased. And I wouldn't have expected anything else. Every funeral, when it was the same way with Ron, the guys all wanted to be around him, even though he's dead laying there and not having our conversation. You're still with him. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what it was. And here's the one thing I want to say. Dad looked great, 100%. He looked a little bit different. It looked like he was sleeping. That personality, and I see these pictures, and those sulcuses in the face were gone, and that spirit was gone. And that was tough because I could see that too. And I think that's a reality that I've never experienced before. You see it with other people and talking with other people, but that was tough. But I needed to be there with him and laying with him.
With a stressful event like that, people don't get a lot of sleep, and Ryan likes to tell the story of me kind of clamping down on the amount of caffeine that he was drinking because he was having, he's a coffee drinker, but he also, we don't drink a lot of pop at our house. See that we're in Indiana, we call it pop, we don't call it soda.
Ulp, we say ulp.
If
too.
I'm going to drink a pop, which is very rare, it's going to be a Mountain Dew because that's really the only kind I like, and that's the same for Ryan. But he, everybody wants to do something for you. What can I get for you? What can I do for you? And his dad's memorial service, as I've mentioned, was huge and hours and hours long.
Well, it wasn't a memorial. It was a service.
His
not
service.
a memorial service.
Sorry. His service was hours and hours,
Which, no shade.
Coming,
you do you, but it wasn't. Anyway.
People coming through. But, everybody wants to do something for him, So I think one time he asked for, a fountain Mountain Dew from the gas station because he likes it, a fountain pop. And so I swear to goodness, every hour somebody was bringing him a fountain pop. And I had to take them, throw them under a pew or throw them in the at the end of the night. It was 11:30 and someone brought you one. I was like, no. Finally I said, no, we're done. Yeah. He hasn't slept in I don't know how long. The last thing he needs is caffeine. And they kind of looked at me like, what? I was like, no. Yeah. No more pop for him.
She was good to me, man. That was tough. That was that moment in time. I think it was blurry. It's still blurry. I'm glad that we recorded it a week out. After it happened, Brian and I, and talked about it because I go back and I listen to some of that stuff and I'm like, man, I don't remember that, or I remember that, but I don't remember it. It just doesn't stick out right now. So, but do you have anything you want to add? Do you have anything you want to say? Anything?
Oh, I always want to say something about everything.
Well,
but this podcast would go on and on and on.
That's okay. It's okay.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else of value.
Wife of a funeral director. How about a little advice to a wife of a funeral director out there? What would that be? Let me ask you this: a challenge that you have with my profession. What is a challenge that you have?
I think it's the challenge that you would expect. It's the scheduling, and it's nice now knowing what days that if you're on call.
Nice now. Referencing what?
Yeah. Previously, before you had been working with Hinsey Brown, it was just you and your dad. It was kind of a crapshoot. You didn't know when things were going to happen. You really couldn't plan anything. And like I said, I'm a planner, and I do not. That irritates the bejesus.
You
out
can say
of me.
it. I can edit it out. You can say it.
I need to know when things are happening. If I'm going to plan something, you need to be there.
She has Excel spreadsheets for everything.
In the beginning, I hated driving separate. I was like, this is such a waste of gas. This is so annoying. We would get in fights. I'm like, no, we are driving together. He's like, but what if I get called out? I was like, I don't care.
And we went together.
And now I'm like, I don't care.
now it is, but gosh, we're a few years in anyway, but that's the biggest thing, you think?
Scheduling?
What would you say? Well, with scheduling, I would say, sometimes how, not necessarily scheduling, but how, like...
You're on the phone a lot. That annoys the crap out of me.
Oh, my gosh. But families call. That's one thing. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's one that I didn't, like, why is there a family calling you at 10:30 at night to ask you something trivial? But you have to, then I have to think about it. I'm like, it's like time stood still. You didn't know if it was day or night. You didn't know what time of the day it was. You're not thinking about calling somebody at 10:30 at night. You're just like, oh, I have to get this done. I want to get it done now. I need to know. You need to have that trajectory of how things are going to go as the family member. So, they're not thinking. They're not,
a lot of
thinking
time
about disturbing somebody at night.
Well, like you said, too, they're trying to keep their mind busy.
Right, trying to keep their mind busy.
So...
I noticed that a lot with you, and I noticed that a lot with your mom. Is she had a task list of things you guys wanted to get done, and
especially
you were hyper focused on that task list.
That was tough. After there was a hyper focus on task lists. You're right. After we had buried him, there was a hyper focus on things that was very challenging for me. I'll say that. You're 100% right with that. So, but I think that ultimately, we did the best we could. Who would have thought, you would have been, the dice would have rolled that way to where you're going to have to deal with a situation like that. And I want to thank you because you dealt with it well. I keep rubbing your leg because I'm here talking to my wife. I am loving on her a little bit because it was a hard thing, guys. That was not easy to, by any means, do. I've had to tell people their loved ones passed away, but my gosh, telling your kid that their grandfather died tragically over a surgery anyway.
Stop.
Sorry.
We're not going there.
It's just not easy to do. And then what comes after that, because it's unpredictable. I just wanted to say thank you. I love you. I'd love to have you on the podcast more often to just have a back and forth talk, because I think this is good. But I appreciate you. You're an unbelievable mother to our girls. Why you roll your eyes?
I'm not rolling my eyes. I'm trying to keep myself from crying. Because it's not a lot that, this is, here's me going on my soapbox. It's not a lot that mothers hear. You're a good mom. You're doing a good job. A dad can change one diaper. Oh my gosh, he's such a great dad. Look at you. And you're like, hello. I've done the other 475 of them.
Right.
So it's nice to hear that.
Well, she works awfully hard, and now she's in a career where she's very happy and honestly very blessed, and our family's been blessed, and I'm blessed to have her by my side and be with you. So I wanted to publicly say that and just publicly love on you a little bit and just say thank you for telling your story, because I think that the story of funeral directors' wives and the story as to what they go through at times does not get talked about. This is one of those moments, I think, that we were able to bring a good story that has some value, because I think there's been plenty of people that have gone through something like this, and to hear somebody publicly talk about it's not easy to do, but thank you for doing that. And thank you for being you. You're the best. So
thank you.
She's looking at me like, what is going on? Well, nothing's going on.
All of this positive reinforcement, I'm not sure what's happening. That's usually your avenue.
Well, it's all it's all good stuff. So do you have anything you want to add, or?
I don't think so.
Well, Tracy Ballard, thank you for coming and being a part of the podcast here, Undertaking the Podcast. You can get a hold of us. info@undertakingthepodcast.com is the email. Undertakingthepodcast.com is that website. As always, friends, rock and roll. Well, guys, I really hope you enjoyed that. I love when Tracy has the opportunity to sit with me and be a part of this. I think this takes up a lot of time from family and takes up a lot of, like I said, family time. We've got to do this. I do this early in the morning or late at night, and try to keep from that. But I enjoy when she gets to be a part of it and gets to tell her story, because like I said, we've all got a story, friends. Everybody. And I feel like stories are disappearing. I always go back to, World War II vets, Vietnam vets, veterans that are disappearing, guys. They're passing away, and we're not talking to them. We need to get those stories down, get their stories down, because, I'm learning so much within this episode. I don't know that my wife would have talked about that had I not prodded her a little bit when it comes to, what did you go through? I think everybody, in a lot of ways I've put this out as to my experience, but my experience with my wife and what she had to deal with is completely different than what my day-to-day was that day. So, I just thought that I wanted her to put it down and say something and have a voice. And be able to, hopefully maybe somebody hears this and maybe this helps them, because there's hard conversations that have to be had. And she had those. And they were different than the conversations that I had. But it doesn't make them any easier. I can't imagine. The sound of a heartbreaking. I always go back to that scream, that yelp, all that weight on you as a funeral director. She felt that. She felt the sound of a heartbreaking, and she understands that now. She understands what that's like for us sitting in that room professionally with these people and these families and having to take it. Oh God, it's like nails to a chalkboard for me, that sound of a heartbreaking, but who else is going to do it? So she, being her medical background as well, she's a closer, man. She's a hero. I love her, and I'm so proud that she wanted to do this and just quite honestly be up front about her experience, because I feel like that's important. And she is a saint among saints. And I know it sounds like I'm really bolstering her up, but we've got to remember and celebrate the people that go through these hard things and come out talking about it, because it lays the groundwork, because it's not going to stop. These things continue to happen as we see in life, and if we don't talk about our experiences, I don't know that it helps us. So I'd like to think that maybe this experience is helping another mom someplace else that maybe has gone through, or it is maybe will at some point. Like I said, experiences don't stop by any means. So friends, let's hit. Oh my gosh, I got deep there. I'm sorry. Anyway, let's hit our sponsors real quick. Gather. We know Gather, guys. Easiest way to manage your business, funeral home, crematory. They have case management software, funeral live streaming. They do stuff with your websites. And I always talk about the body tracking, the QR codes, guys. I'm big into the QR codes. I don't understand why we aren't using those more often, especially when it comes to tracking. So gather.app is the website. You will find the website in the show notes and whatnot. Nationalmortuaryshipping.com. When it was just me and my dad, I believe we used them a few different times. When we were really dealing with some things that were coming, from 5-6 states away. And it was nice because being a rural funeral home, I don't deal with repatriation. I don't deal with a lot of people coming in and out of the state. Now it's different. We get a lot of people from Kentucky. So Duvall and myself are in communication every now and again. But if you don't have those networking opportunities and you haven't talked to anybody that you really know within an area, I mean, you see this on Facebook groups all the time. Hey, I need a funeral director out in the Chicagoland area or Wyoming or things like that. I've got a death call out in that area, and it's interesting. This is something I think y'all need to be looking into. National Mortuary Shipping, nationalmortuaryshipping.com is the website. And like I said, they can help you. There's a lot of things that they do. Their services are embalming, shipping, domestic shipping, and international shipping. I go back to that. That's something sometimes it's easier just to call somebody for, because golly, I know old Falcone deals with that down south. So that's one of those things that he has to deal with to Mexico and whatnot. So being he's a border state. So it's interesting. Everybody does it differently, but like here in Indiana, I wouldn't know what to do. I'd have to call somebody or get some guidance. So National Mortuary Shipping, friends, is who I would call in those situations. So on this final episode on this final ad here, when it comes to this episode, it's always fitting. The Indiana Donor Network. This is something for me that is very, very important and hits home, especially when we talk about my father, and being a recipient. And people can say blood, people bust my chops about that. Well, he was just a recipient of blood. Well, yeah, that's right. It wasn't his. So he's a recipient. People got to understand. Once again, I go back to me being the unicorn of the human race. Donated blood saved my father. The first go around. Now, mind you, there were a few other mishaps the medical community still hasn't answered for, but that's neither here nor there. What I'm saying is he was a recipient, and we got to hang out with him another year because of that. So IndianaDonorNetwork.org is the website. They have been proud supporters of this podcast for a long time. And you know what's interesting? As we spend more time with them and as they're a part of this podcast more, it's interesting how they're affecting our lives personally now within the podcast. How I would never thought that I would be in the situation that we're in right now with the conversation I just had with my wife. And here we are. And I'm talking about the experience that we had. It was a good experience as a funeral director with our OPO, Organ Procurement Organization. So IndianaDonorNetwork.org. Mackenzie Huey is our funeral director liaison. Find her on the website. You can. It's, especially if you're listening from elsewhere, reach out to them. I mean, they'll spearhead something for you. They would be more than happy to help you get in contact with your state and try to help you guys work on some sort of a council or get something started. All donor networks aren't equal. I'm going to say that. And the Indiana Donor Network, like I've said, has been a blessing to my family, and I can't speak enough good things about them. So there we are. Golly, how about the ads on that? The deep ad reads, I hope Tracy likes these on her episode. She has blown me so much garbage about my live ad reads. And I was on the phone with a buddy the other night. He'll know who he is. When I was on an ad read and said, hey, Ryan, just act like you normally do when you do on when you're just talking and whatnot on the ad reads. And yeah. It's just a little bit different, something new. So I enjoy it. I'm still working on it. But yeah, I don't know that I'm nervous on ad reads. I just think that, there's a responsibility there. So you got to get them in and you've got to know something about these people. And that's why, with the donor network, it's so easy to talk about because it's so intimate within my family when it comes to donations. So, all right, friends, rate, review, subscribe, tell a friend. Undertakingthepodcast.com is that website. Find us on YouTube, please. Undertakingthepodcast.com is the website. Info@undertakingthepodcast.com is the email. As always, friends, rock and roll.